Northern Germany, September 8th, 1944. At a top-secret military research and development facility, Nazi Germany unleashes a terrifying new weapon, the V-2 rocket. During the next 6 months, the Nazis launch roughly 1,100 V-2 rockets against England, which decimate buildings throughout London and kill approximately 9,000 people. These missiles belong to a category of advanced technology that the Nazis call Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapons.
Hitler's wonder weapons were high technology weapons, while the Allies were dropping bombs on German cities. The Germans were launching a ballistic missile which could travel from Germany to London in just minutes and unleash hell. In many respects, the Germans were well ahead of the Allies in technological advances in a whole range of fields. And Hitler was promising the party faithful that we have a game-changing addition to the war. We can turn the tide. So that confidence must have come from somewhere.
What secret technology were Nazi scientists working on that convinced Hitler that Germany could win the war? Well, according to Polish researcher and author Igor Witkowski, who has investigated that very question for more than 20 years, it was a mysterious Nazi weapon known as Die Glock, or the bell.
My story started from a meeting with a man from our intelligence services who disclosed to me some puzzling for them documents from 1940s, 1950s. It was a description from an interrogation of a former SS officer who described some strange device that looked more or less like a bell. According to the documents, the bell, or die Glocke in German, was built to generate artificial gravity. It was clearly described as something very secret. They pinned very high hopes on this. It was something that was meant to save the Reich.
In 2007, Igor Witkowski's extraordinary claims were revealed to the wider world when he published a book titled The Truth About the Wunderwaffe.
According to Igor Witkowski, the bell was described as being about 12 to 15 feet tall and shaped like a bell. It had two counter-rotating cylinders that were filled with a mercury-like substance that was highly radioactive. Once it was activated, it emitted a field that was about 600 feet in diameter. Anybody that got too close to this field died. Several of the scientists who were working on the bell suffered this fate. The theory was that when the bell was activated, if you create a powerful enough electromagnetic field that you could actually warp space-time in a highly localized area, creating anti-gravity and possibly even time travel.
But if the bell did exist, as Igor Witkowski claims, then where were the Nazis developing such an extraordinary piece of secret technology? Ludwikowice, Poland. This densely forested area hides remnants of an ultra-clandestine test facility with secret subterranean chambers, tunnels, and fortifications. And Igor Witkowski contends that this town was dedicated to the development of the bell.
In the original intelligence documents that I was shown related to this bell, die Glocke, there was a mention of the town of Ludwikowice. For a very long time, nobody knew about its existence. It was a valley sealed off, inside the mountains, inside the Third Reich, far from any possible front line. It was a complex dedicated to weapons of strategic range that could attack and destroy the United States, for example.
Could this secret facility have been the test site for the Bell? Some believe the proof lies with an enigmatic structure at the center of the complex, known as the Henge.
The Henge is a name given to this bizarre structure, which really does look almost like a concrete Stonehenge. And some researchers believe that the Glock, or the bell, was somehow inserted into this structure.
In my opinion, the closest resemblance is to a test rig for testing vertically taking off and landing crafts. So the Henge might have been therefore a testing facility for something that was flying or contained fast-spinning components that we know from the documents match the device, the bell.
We've heard all the theories, but we don't know, because apparently it was not ready for operational use. But had the bell been developed and had it proven to be an effective weapon, Hitler would have used it.
The possibility of Die Glock becoming operational in the hands of the Third Reich is frightening, to say the least. But in addition to creating weapons of war, the German forces were also on the hunt for an ancient holy relic, described in the Old Testament as an object so powerful, one touch could strike a person dead. Southwest France. This mountainous region is more than 500 miles from Rome and almost 2,000 miles from Jerusalem. According to legend, the Ark of the Covenant was once hidden not in these holy cities, but in a 13th century French fortress called the Château de Montségur.
Throughout France, there are legends from north to south about the Ark of the Covenant being in the land there at different periods of time. One of the potential resting sites of the Ark of the Covenant in France was on the mountaintop of Montségur, and it was a stronghold of the Cathar people. Now, the Cathars were a Christian sect that lived in France in the Middle Ages, and they had strong spiritual convictions. So there is an idea that because these treasures that were brought back from the Holy Land were spiritual, and the Cathars were deeply spiritual people, that the church may have brought these treasures, including the Ark of the Covenant, to the Cathar people.
The Ark of the Covenant in southern France? It's an intriguing possibility, one that in 1936 caught the attention of the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany, Heinrich Himmler.
Himmler and Hitler were both obsessed with obtaining relics. During the occupation of France, there were a number of Nazi brigades that were actually dispatched throughout the region of the Pyrenees into Montségur in search of the Ark of the Covenant. There are still tracks in the mountains today from where the Nazis were mining, essentially, in the mountains, looking for these potential artifacts. They truly did believe that the Ark may have still been there in those mountains.
Heinrich Himmler was obsessed with occultism. You have to remember that the occult had had a massive influence on Nazi ideology. And it may seem crazy, but he sent people out on these quests to find these sacred items.
The Nazis never found the Ark at Montségur. But what compelled them to invest so much time and effort into finding it? Were they simply trying to find a magnificent golden chest? Perhaps. But there are many who believe that the Nazis had an ulterior motive.
The Ark of the Covenant was particularly coveted by Heinrich Himmler because it possessed enormous power, and it was carried by the Israelites in the long exodus to the Promised Land. So when they fought their enemies, in order to establish their homeland, the Ark of the Covenant would be carried before them and would emit terrible power, smiting their enemies. It brought down the walls of Jericho simply by its presence. It emitted thunderbolts at the enemy. And in the eyes of a Nazi, what was not to like? They believed that this would usher in the 1,000-year Reich.
If you watch the movie Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, all that magical stuff the Ark does, you know, Steven Spielberg didn't make that up. That's all in the Midrash. That's all in Jewish legends. It's like a nuclear weapon. So by legend, the Ark had these tremendous powers, and that's why people wanted to take it with them into battle, because it was powerful and dangerous.
According to the story that we have in the Bible, when the Ark is coming up to Jerusalem, this cart that it's on hits a bump or something and it starts to tip, and this nice guy named Uzzah reaches out to keep it from tipping over, but because he touched the Ark, God strikes him dead. So everybody's terrified of this thing. It has so much power, it can just zap people dead.
Struck down by the wrath of God? Perhaps. But there are some who claim that there is a more scientific way to explain this extraordinary account from the Bible.
The Ark of the Covenant is a fascinating story and concept, for that matter. You have in the biblical scripture a description of a device. It's got specific dimensions, specific materials, and specific structures and shapes. So what the device is for is a whole other question, but it sounds like a technological device to store energy, like a modern-day capacitor, because it is coated with a conductor, gold. Then there is another material inside that that is a non-conductor, wood. And then it's got another layer of gold on the inside. And that's exactly how we build capacitors. There's a conductor, an insulator, then a conductor. And then on top of the Ark are these wing-shaped pointing structures. If you look at modern-day Tesla coils and Van de Graaff generators, we always put a probe on the top of it, like a little needle or a little metal arm, so that lightning can jump off of that. It's a point of which the energy is transmitted from. This sounds a lot like the Ark of the Covenant.
It has long been believed that the Ark of the Covenant had some type of electromagnetic energy, a power that is not supernatural or spiritual in nature, but very much technological. So the powers that it had, the abilities that it was able to manifest, to this day, is still a mystery.
One of the most iconic stories in medieval literature is from the tales of King Arthur, where young Arthur single-handedly pulls a sword out of a stone. It was a feat that revealed him to be the one true king of Britain. But there's another sword in the Arthur legend that is no less compelling.
There are two swords in the Arthur story. One comes out of that stone, and later he gets his sword as a gift from the Lady of the Lake. This is the goddess of the lake, and her arm comes up out of the water holding a sword. And that is Excalibur, a sword beyond other swords.
Excalibur, we are told, had a golden hilt and had magical powers. It's a sword that's supposed to make Arthur invincible.
Arthur's story is the hero's journey because it is the magic and the sacred and all the mystical dimensions. In the hero's journey, the protagonist gains a special tool or weapon. This is the magical thing. It will be just the thing you needed, although you might not know it at the time. And then the moment will arise and you see exactly why you have it.
According to legend, King Arthur used Excalibur to win many battles and unite Britain under his leadership. But, alas, Arthur finally died on the battlefield when he was mortally wounded by his son, Mordred.
As King Arthur lies dying on the field of battle, he asks that his sword, Excalibur, the source of all his power, be taken by a knight and thrown into a nearby lake. When this happens, the hand of the Lady of the Lake breaks through the surface of the water, grabs hold of the sword, and takes it down into the crystal depths to keep it until some future king may need it when Britain is again threatened.
Many scholars believe that magic is an important part of what makes the King Arthur story so powerful. And curiously, the supernatural elements of Excalibur may not have been merely a fantasy.
The story of Excalibur may seem one of the medieval additions, if you like, to the tale of King Arthur that sounds the least likely. But in fact, the story of Excalibur and the knight throwing it to the Lady of the Lake could be based on historical events. The Celtic warriors of the time Arthur existed had a tradition that their soul, if you like, was in their sword. And at their funerals, their swords were often thrown into a sacred lake or pool as an offering to a water goddess. And in fact, archaeology has discovered many ancient swords that had been thrown into lakes that have since dried up. So the story of the Lady of the Lake, this strange nymph-like woman that takes the sword, could have originated with the tradition of casting a warrior's sword as an offering to a water goddess.
It's intriguing to think that Excalibur, the sword with mystical powers that would unite a nation, might really exist. And if the Arthurian legends are true, maybe one day the shining glimmer under the water's surface will reveal the final resting place of the heroic king's powerful weapon.